Marcus Whitmore stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a glittering circuit board. At 42, he commanded a business empire worth $300 million, yet the view that should have filled him with pride only reminded him of how alone he felt at the top. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his brooding thoughts. "Mr. Whitmore, your daughter is here to see you," his secretary announced through the speaker. A genuine smile crossed his weathered features for the first time that day. "Send her in, Patricia." 8-year-old Emma burst through the mahogany doors like a ray of sunshine piercing storm clouds. Her golden curls bounced as she ran toward him, her school uniform slightly wrinkled from the day's adventures. Marcus caught her in his arms, lifting her effortlessly as she wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Daddy Marcus, I missed you so much today," she whispered against his ear, using the name she had chosen for him when she first came to live in his home 3 years ago. Marcus felt his heart constrict with the familiar mixture of love and protective instinct that Emma always stirred within him. She wasn't his biological daughter, but she might as well have been. Her mother, Sarah, had been his housekeeper until a tragic car accident claimed her life, leaving Emma orphaned and alone. Without hesitation, Marcus had taken her in, becoming her legal guardian and the only father she had ever truly known. "I missed you too, sweetheart," he murmured, settling her on his lap in the leather chair behind his desk. "How was school today? Did you finish that math homework we worked on last night?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, her bright blue eyes sparkling with pride. "Mrs. Henderson said I got all the problems right. She even put a gold star on my paper." She dug into her small backpack and produced a worksheet covered in careful pencil marks and adorned with a shimmering gold star sticker. Marcus examined the paper with the same attention he gave to million-dollar contracts. "This is excellent work, Emma. I'm so proud of you." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I have something for you." Emma's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped the gift to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a butterfly. "It's beautiful, Daddy Marcus. Thank you so much." As he helped her fasten the bracelet around her tiny wrist, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since Emma entered it. Before her arrival, his days had been consumed entirely by business meetings, corporate acquisitions, and the relentless pursuit of profit. Now, his evenings were filled with homework sessions, bedtime stories, and the simple joy of watching a child discover the world around her. "Daddy Marcus," Emma said quietly, her voice taking on a more serious tone as she traced patterns on his desk with her finger. "Can I tell you something important?" "Of course, sweetheart. You can tell me anything." Marcus turned his full attention to her, noting the slight furrow in her brow that appeared when she was troubled about something. Emma glanced toward the closed office door, then leaned closer to him, lowering her voice to barely above a whisper. "It's about Miss Rosa. I think she's doing something bad." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine at the mention of Rosa Martinez, the woman who had replaced Emma's mother as his head housekeeper. Rosa had been with them for nearly 2 years now, and he had grown to trust her completely. She managed his household with remarkable efficiency, ensuring that everything ran smoothly while he focused on his business empire. "What do you mean, Emma? What kind of bad thing?" Marcus kept his voice gentle, not wanting to dismiss her concerns, but also hoping this was simply a child's misunderstanding. Emma's small hands fidgeted with the hem of her school skirt as she struggled to find the right words. "I've been watching her, Daddy Marcus. When she thinks nobody is looking, she takes things. Important things from your study and your bedroom." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His study contained sensitive business documents, contracts worth millions of dollars, and personal information that could destroy him if it fell into the wrong hands. His bedroom housed his personal safe, which contained not only cash and jewelry, but also backup drives with confidential business data. "Emma, this is very serious. Are you absolutely certain about what you saw?" Marcus fought to keep his voice steady, not wanting to frighten her, but needing to understand exactly what she had witnessed. Emma nodded solemnly, her young face grave with the weight of her revelation. "Yesterday, when you were at your big meeting downtown, I came home early from school because I forgot my library book. Miss Rosa didn't know I was there. I saw her in your study, taking pictures of papers on your desk with her phone. And last week, I saw her writing down numbers from that little book you keep in your bedroom drawer." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The little book Emma referred to contained account numbers, passwords, and access codes to some of his most sensitive financial accounts. If Rosa had that information, she could potentially access millions of dollars or sell the data to his competitors. Did you see anything else, sweetheart? Any other times when Miss Rosa was doing things she shouldn't? Marcus struggled to maintain his composure while his mind raced through the implications of Emma's observations. Emma bit her lower lip, a habit she had developed when she was nervous or uncertain. Sometimes I hear her talking on the phone in Spanish when she thinks everyone is asleep. She sounds angry or excited, and she mentions your name a lot. I don't understand all the words, but I know she's talking about you and about money. Marcus felt a cold fury building in his chest, not just at the betrayal, but at the thought that Emma had been carrying this burden alone. Emma, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? Tears began to well up in Emma's eyes as she looked down at her hands. I was scared, Daddy Marcus. Miss Rosa is always so nice to me, and I thought maybe I was wrong. I didn't want to get her in trouble if I made a mistake. But it keeps happening, and I got more and more worried about you. Marcus pulled Emma closer, holding her tightly as he felt his heart break for this brave little girl who had been trying to protect him. You did the right thing by telling me, sweetheart. You should never have to carry worries like this by yourself. From now on, if something concerns you, you come to me immediately, okay? Emma nodded against his chest, her small body trembling slightly with relief at finally sharing her secret. Are you going to fire Miss Rosa? Will she be very angry with me? You don't need to worry about Miss Rosa being angry with you, Emma. You've done nothing wrong. As for what happens next, I need to be very careful and make sure I handle this properly. Marcus's mind was already formulating a plan, but he knew he had to be strategic about how he approached the situation. The remainder of their time together that evening was subdued, with Marcus struggling to maintain a normal facade while his thoughts churned with betrayal and anger. After Emma went to bed, he sat in his study, staring at the very desk where Rosa had allegedly been photographing his documents. The room that had always been his sanctuary now felt violated and unsafe. Over the next several days, Marcus began to observe Rosa more carefully, looking for signs of the deception Emma had described. On the surface, Rosa continued to perform her duties with the same efficiency and apparent dedication she had always shown. She greeted him each morning with a warm smile, prepared his meals exactly as he preferred them, and maintained his household to his exacting standards. However, now that he was watching for it, Marcus began to notice subtle inconsistencies in Rosa's behavior. She seemed nervous when he entered rooms unexpectedly, quickly closing her phone or moving away from his desk. He caught her glancing at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something that might have been guilt or calculation. Marcus decided to set a trap. He deliberately left a fake document on his desk, something that appeared to be a confidential merger agreement but was actually completely fabricated. He positioned it prominently and made sure Rosa would have access to his study while he was out of the house for an extended business meeting. When he returned that evening, the document had been moved slightly from its original position. More tellingly, when he checked the hidden security camera he had installed in his study that morning, the footage clearly showed Rosa entering the room, photographing the document with her phone, and then carefully replacing it in what she thought was its original position. The evidence was undeniable, but Marcus felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Instead, he felt a deep sense of betrayal and violation that cut to his core. Rosa had been living in his home, caring for Emma, and enjoying his trust while systematically stealing from him and potentially putting his entire business empire at risk. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus sat in his study reviewing the security footage and trying to determine the full extent of Rosa's betrayal. The camera had captured her on multiple occasions over the past week, always when she believed the house was empty, methodically photographing documents, copying information from his computer, and even attempting to access his personal safe. The next morning, Marcus made the difficult decision to confront Rosa directly. He waited until Emma had left for school, then asked Rosa to join him in his study. She entered with her usual pleasant demeanor, but Marcus could see the wariness in her eyes as she took in his serious expression. Rosa, we need to have a conversation about your employment here, Marcus began, his voice carefully controlled despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. Rosa's face remained composed, but Marcus noticed her hands clenched slightly at her sides. Of course, Mr. Whitmore. Is there something wrong with my work? Marcus turned his computer monitor toward her, showing the frozen image from the security camera of her photographing documents at his desk. I think you know exactly what's wrong, Rosa. The color drained from Rosa's face as she stared at the incriminating image. For a moment, she seemed to consider denying what was clearly visible on the screen, but then her shoulders sagged in defeat. How long have you known? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Long enough, Marcus replied, his tone cold and professional. The question now is why, Rosa? I trusted you. I welcomed you into my home, treated you fairly, paid you well above market rate. Why would you betray that trust? Rosa's composure cracked, and tears began to stream down her face. You don't understand, Mr. Whitmore. My family in Guatemala, they're in terrible trouble. My brother owes money to very dangerous people, and they threatened to kill him and his children if I didn't help them get information about wealthy Americans. Marcus felt a flicker of sympathy despite his anger, but he couldn't allow personal circumstances to excuse such a serious betrayal. So you chose to steal from me instead of coming to me for help? Rosa, if you had explained your situation, I would have found a way to assist your family without compromising my security or Emma's safety. I was scared, Rosa sobbed. These people, they said if I told anyone or tried to get help any other way, they would hurt my family anyway. They wanted specific information about your business dealings, your accounts, your personal life. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, they would leave my family alone. Marcus realized with growing horror that Rosa's betrayal went far deeper than simple theft. She had been feeding information to what sounded like an organized criminal network, potentially exposing not only his financial assets, but also personal details that could be used to harm him or Emma. Rosa, you need to understand the gravity of what you've done. This isn't just about stealing money or documents. You've potentially put Emma and me in physical danger by giving criminals detailed information about our lives, our routines, our security measures. The full weight of her actions seemed to hit Rosa all at once, and she collapsed into a chair, her body racked with sobs. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. I just wanted to save my family. I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore. I'm so very sorry. Marcus felt his anger warring with pity as he looked at this woman who had been caught between impossible choices. However, his primary concern had to be protecting Emma and securing his business interests from whatever damage had already been done. Rosa, I need you to tell me everything. Who are these people? What specific information did you give them? How long has this been going on? Marcus's voice was firm but not unkind as he tried to assess the full scope of the situation. Over the next hour, Rosa provided a detailed confession of her activities over the past 18 months. She had been approached by men claiming to represent her brother's creditors, who had somehow discovered her employment with a wealthy American businessman. They had initially asked for basic information about Marcus's daily routines and security measures, but their demands had gradually escalated to include financial data, business documents, and personal details. The scope of the information Rosa had provided was staggering and potentially devastating. She had photographed hundreds of documents, copied computer files, recorded conversations, and even provided detailed floor plans of the penthouse. In return, she had received assurances that her family would be safe and small payments that she had sent to Guatemala. As Rosa finished her confession, Marcus felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the betrayal and the potential consequences. His business empire, built over decades of careful planning and strategic decisions, could be vulnerable to attack from competitors who now had access to his most sensitive information. More importantly, Emma's safety could be compromised by criminals who knew intimate details about their daily lives. Rosa, I want to help you and your family, but you have to understand that there will be consequences for what you've done. I'm going to have to contact the authorities, and you'll likely face criminal charges. However, if you cooperate fully and help us identify these people who threatened your family, I'll do everything I can to ensure you receive fair treatment. Rosa nodded through her tears, seeming to understand that her situation was beyond redemption, but grateful that Marcus was offering some measure of compassion despite her betrayal. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity as Marcus contacted his security team, his lawyers, and eventually the FBI. The federal agents who arrived at his penthouse were experienced in cases involving international criminal networks and immediately recognized the sophisticated nature of the operation that had targeted Marcus through Rosa. Special Agent Jennifer Chun, who took the lead on the case, explained to Marcus that Rosa appeared to be a victim as much as a perpetrator. Mr. Whitmore, we've seen this pattern before. Criminal organizations identify domestic workers employed by wealthy individuals and use threats against their families to coerce cooperation. These workers are often terrified and feel they have no choice but to comply. While Marcus understood the circumstances that had led to Rosa's betrayal, he couldn't shake the feeling of violation and vulnerability that her actions had created. Every document in his study, every conversation in his home, every moment of his private life had potentially been compromised and shared with unknown criminals. The investigation moved quickly, with Rosa's cooperation proving invaluable in identifying the network that had exploited her. The FBI discovered that the operation was far more extensive than initially realized, with similar schemes targeting dozens of wealthy individuals across the country through their domestic employees. Within a week, coordinated raids in multiple cities resulted in the arrest of the key figures in the criminal network. Rosa's family in Guatemala was placed under protective custody, and the immediate threat to their safety was eliminated. However, the damage to Marcus's sense of security and trust would take much longer to heal. Throughout this ordeal, Marcus's primary concern remained Emma's well-being. He had explained the situation to her in age-appropriate terms, emphasizing that she had done the right thing by telling him about her concerns and that none of what happened was her fault. Emma, with the resilience that children often display, seemed to adapt to the changes more easily than Marcus had expected. "I'm glad Miss Rosa's family is safe now," she told him one evening as they sat together in his study, which had been thoroughly swept for surveillance devices and completely reorganized. "But I'm also glad she can't steal from you anymore." Marcus marveled at Emma's ability to hold both compassion for Rosa and loyalty to him in her young heart. "You're very wise, sweetheart. Sometimes people do bad things because they're scared or desperate, but that doesn't make the bad things okay. Will we get a new housekeeper?" Emma asked, curling up against Marcus's side as they sat on the leather sofa. "Eventually, yes. But this time, we'll be much more careful about who we trust with our home and our family." Marcus wrapped his arms around Emma, feeling grateful beyond measure for this perceptive little girl who had saved him from even greater damage through her courage and observation. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and emotionally draining. Rosa ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of theft and conspiracy, but the judge took her circumstances into account and sentenced her to probation and community service rather than prison time. Marcus had testified on her behalf, acknowledging her cooperation and the coercive circumstances that had led to her actions. In the months that followed, Marcus implemented extensive new security measures for both his business and personal life. He hired a security firm to conduct thorough background checks on all employees, installed additional surveillance systems, and restructured his information management to limit access to sensitive data. More importantly, he began to rebuild the sense of trust and security that had been shattered by Rosa's betrayal. He realized that his wealth and success, while providing many advantages, also made him a target for those who would exploit any vulnerability to gain access to his resources. Emma continued to thrive despite the upheaval in their household. If anything, the experience seemed to have strengthened the bond between them, as Marcus came to appreciate even more deeply her wisdom, courage, and unwavering loyalty. She had protected him when he was most vulnerable, demonstrating a maturity and perceptiveness that amazed him daily. One evening, several months after Rosa's departure, Marcus and Emma were working together on her homework when she looked up at him with a serious expression. "Daddy Marcus, I've been thinking about what happened with Miss Rosa." Marcus set down his pen and gave her his full attention. "What have you been thinking about, sweetheart?" "I think maybe she wasn't a bad person, just a scared person who made bad choices. But I also think that even when people are scared, they should tell the truth to people who care about them." Emma's insight struck Marcus as remarkably mature for an 8-year-old. "That's a very wise observation, Emma. Sometimes adults make mistakes because they're afraid, just like children do. The important thing is to learn from those mistakes and try to make better choices in the future." Emma nodded thoughtfully, then smiled at him with the radiant expression that never failed to lift his spirits. "I'm glad I told you the truth about what I saw, even though I was scared too." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion as he pulled Emma into a hug. "I'm glad too, sweetheart. You saved us both by being brave enough to speak up." As they returned to Emma's homework, Marcus reflected on how profoundly this experience had changed him. The betrayal had been painful and costly, but it had also taught him valuable lessons about trust, vulnerability, and the importance of the relationships that truly mattered in his life. He had learned that his wealth, while providing security and opportunities, also required constant vigilance to protect. More importantly, he had learned that the most valuable thing in his life wasn't his business empire or his financial assets, but the trust and love he shared with Emma. The new housekeeper they eventually hired was a kind, older woman named Margaret who had impeccable references and had passed the most thorough background investigation Marcus's security team could conduct. However, Marcus found himself maintaining a level of professional distance that he had never felt necessary before Rosa's betrayal. Emma, with her characteristic perceptiveness, noticed the change in how Marcus interacted with the household staff. "You don't talk to Miss Margaret the same way you used to talk to Miss Rosa," she observed one day. Marcus considered how to explain the complex emotions he was still processing. "Sometimes when someone breaks our trust, it makes us more careful about trusting other people, even when those other people haven't done anything wrong." "But that's not fair to Miss Margaret," Emma pointed out with the straightforward logic that children often possess. Marcus realized that Emma was absolutely right. His wariness, while understandable, was preventing him from building the kind of positive working relationship that would benefit everyone in the household. "You're right, Emma. I need to give Miss Margaret a fair chance to earn my trust, just like Miss Rosa had when she first came to work for us." Over time, Marcus gradually allowed himself to develop a more normal relationship with Margaret and the other members of his household staff. However, he maintained the security protocols and background check procedures that had been implemented after Rosa's betrayal, recognizing that trust and caution could coexist when properly balanced. The criminal network that had exploited Rosa was ultimately dismantled, with its leaders receiving substantial prison sentences. The FBI's investigation revealed that Marcus had been targeted specifically because of his wealth and his reputation as a private person who rarely appeared in public, making him an ideal victim for long-term surveillance and information gathering. Agent Chen kept Marcus informed of the investigation's progress and eventually provided him with a comprehensive report detailing how the criminal organization had operated. "Mr. Whitmore, you should know that Rosa's information was being sold to multiple buyers, including some of your business competitors. We've recovered most of the stolen data, but you should assume that some sensitive information may still be in circulation." This news prompted Marcus to take additional protective measures for his business operations, including changing security protocols, restructuring certain deals, and implementing new safeguards for confidential information. The financial cost of these measures was substantial, but Marcus recognized them as necessary investments in his long-term security. Despite the challenges and changes that Rosa's betrayal had brought into their lives, Marcus found that his relationship with Emma had grown even stronger. She had proven herself to be not only a loving daughter, but also a trusted ally who would protect their family when necessary. 1 year after Rosa's departure, Marcus and Emma were sitting together in his study, which had been completely redecorated and reorganized following the security breach. Emma was reading a book while Marcus reviewed business documents, both of them comfortable in the familiar routine they had reestablished. "Daddy Marcus," Emma said suddenly, looking up from her book, "do you think Miss Rosa is okay now?" Marcus set down his papers and considered the question carefully. According to the last report he had received, Rosa had completed her community service and was working at a community center helping other immigrants navigate legal and social services. Her family in Guatemala remained safe under a protection program, and she seemed to be rebuilding her life with the support of various social service organizations. "I think Miss Rosa is working hard to make better choices now, Emma. Sometimes people need a second chance to show they can do the right thing." Emma nodded thoughtfully, then returned to her book. Marcus marveled once again at her capacity for both justice and compassion, qualities that he hoped would serve her well as she grew up in a complex world. As evening fell and they prepared for dinner, Marcus reflected on how much their lives had changed since that day when Emma had whispered her concerns about Rosa's behavior. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also revealed the strength of their bond and Emma's remarkable character. The experience had taught Marcus that true security came not from wealth or elaborate protective measures, but from the trust and loyalty of those who truly cared about him. Emma had proven that she would protect him just as fiercely as he would protect her, creating a partnership that transcended their unconventional father-daughter relationship. Looking at Emma as she carefully set the table for their dinner, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the day she had found the courage to share her suspicions with him. Her whispered warning had not only saved him from potentially catastrophic financial and personal damage, but had also demonstrated the depth of her love and commitment to their family. The betrayal had shaken Marcus's faith in his ability to judge character and trust others, but Emma's loyalty had restored his belief in the fundamental goodness that could exist in human relationships. She had shown him that even in a world where people might exploit trust for personal gain, there were still those who would sacrifice their own comfort to protect the people they loved. As they sat down to dinner together, Marcus raised his glass of water in a small toast. To Emma, the bravest and wisest person I know. Emma giggled and raised her own glass. To Daddy Marcus, who always listens when I have something important to say. Their glasses clinked together in the warm light of the dining room, sealing a bond that had been tested by betrayal but had emerged stronger than ever. Marcus knew that whatever challenges the future might bring, he and Emma would face them together, protected by the unshakable trust and love they shared. The criminal investigation had concluded, the security measures were in place, and life had settled into a new normal. However, the most important outcome of the entire ordeal was the confirmation that Marcus and Emma were truly family in every sense that mattered, bound together by loyalty, love, and an unbreakable commitment to protecting each other from whatever dangers the world might present. In the end, Rose's betrayal had inadvertently strengthened the very relationship she had threatened, proving that some bonds are too strong to be broken by deception or greed. Emma's courage in speaking up had not only saved Marcus's fortune, but it also affirmed the foundation of trust upon which their family was built, ensuring that they would continue to thrive together regardless of whatever challenges lay ahead.